From the American putting his status as undisputed lightweight world champion on the line, to Teofimo Lopez and Eddie Hearn making shocking predictions about the upcoming fight, here's why Devin Haney vows to dismantle Vasiliy Lomachenko once and for all for that pound-for-pound supremacy. In fact, he says it's about time he proved himself. Right now, he's making his way to the #1 fight spot, and the fight against Vasiliy in Las Vegas on May 20th is gonna decide everything, because he's putting his status as undisputed lightweight world champion on the line in a fight that's taken years to become a reality. Haney claims the former 3-weight world champion turned down the opportunity to fight him 4 years ago, only to come back and fight a much more improved version of the American. Let's face it, he's way more experienced, strong, and mature than he was 4 years ago in the ring. Sure, Vasiliy is going to be tough competition, but that doesn't guarantee a victory. I mean, Haney's got a bunch of impressive wins to back him up, much like the one against George Kambosos Jr. in Australia, where he managed to defend his undisputed title, all while building himself up for a spot on the top of a stacked division. But what about Lomachenko? Well, this isn't going to be a walk in the park for him either, but he's ready to step into more untapped levels and win over with his expertise. And that's exactly what Haney wants, tough competition. Because he's not out there looking for any sort of easy wins. He wants someone he can replace, and taking Vasili's place to establish pound-for-pound supremacy is the perfect way to do that. Not to mention, Lomachenko's known as one of boxing's most gifted technicians, and that makes sense, especially when you think about the 2 Olympic gold medals he's got, on top of his haul of world titles in the professional ranks. The 35-year-old's success and universal respect are exactly why Haney thinks this fight is way more than just belts. He's trying to build a legacy, and he claims he's got a lot to bring into the ring. From skill and discipline to incredibly high fight IQ, he's willing to do whatever it takes to overpower Vasiliy, even if that means stepping out of his comfort zone. And this isn't even the end of it. Haney claims that this fight is only the first on a long list of wanted fights coming up, and if he manages to grab a win against the Ukrainian and establish his dominance, it's going to take him right to the top. Think about it. While a bunch of divisions are barely able to get high-profile title fights on the table, Haney is setting the tone of his career by welcoming any fight in any location, because he's ready for whatever comes his way. But despite all the hype, the fight with Loma wasn't really an easy road to begin with. If anything, the negotiations behind closed doors only made things more complicated. Not to mention the venue ended up in Las Vegas, even though they were planning it in Saudi Arabia for months. Having said that, this fight isn't just going to be a game-changer for Haney, but also for many younger guys trying to make their way to the top, because despite being a lot younger than his opponent, he's ready to test himself. I mean, this fight is going to change everything. It could either amplify Loma's legacy or even open doors for Haney at the next weight. While one guy's trying to make his way to the top as the undisputed champion with his WBC, WBA, WBO, and IBF belts at stake, the other is trying to prove he's still got what it takes after his reign as unified champion came to a devastating end by Teofimo Lopez back in 2020. And it's going to be thrilling to see which one of them manages to make their way to victory. So while Haney's ready to take him down, Vasiliy is up for the challenge too. He wants to become the undisputed champion once again, but Haney's the man with the belts. I mean, he literally made a comeback with the ruthless stoppage of Masayoshi Nakatani and added to dominant point victories to top it off. So he's definitely sharpening his skills for the upcoming fight. And think about how far he's come for this. You've all seen how good he was, or is, depending on where he stands right now. Arguably, he's the best amateur fighter of all time right after he became a 3-division champion in his first 12 pro fights. But all of that changed once he had to give up his undisputed 135-pound championship to Lopez back in 2020, although fans still claim that his shoulder injury might have slowed him down. Having said that, he's only fought 3 more times right after Russia invaded his native country back in February 2022. And that's when he was sort of giving up, and even accepted that at a time like this, he simply couldn't focus on his job. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian government stepped in to encourage its athletes to raise the morale of its people. And although he returned with the Ortiz fight, his actual comeback is gonna be the upcoming fight against Haney, because if he manages to win, he's gonna climb back up the pound-for-pound list. Right now, he's at number 11, and there's a long way to go before he redeems himself and regains all the belts he's lost. Having said that, even though he's a pretty confident fighter, he hasn't made any bold predictions about the upcoming fight. After all, once you enter the ring, anything can happen. Right now, he's putting his head down and focusing on training. Meanwhile, the American's the sport's brightest young superstar right now. And even though he's got impressive wins over respected veteran Jorge Linares and Yuriorkis Gamboa, a win over Loma is going to take his reputation to an all-time high. Honestly, this is going to be a memorable fight to say the least. And they've already kicked it off with a news conference with the American glad that the time's finally come after begging for 4 years. I mean, not just him, but even the fans have been waiting way too long for this fight to happen. Speaking of which, some pros stepped in with their predictions for the fight too, like Eddie Hearn, who's pretty confident in Haney. On the one hand, you've got Loma, who held belts from every single one of the 4 governing bodies, and that even includes a WBC franchise belt. On the other hand, Haney was pretty much the regular WBC champion. As for Hearns, he claims the American's in a much stronger position to overpower the former champion. If anything, it's definitely going to be a pretty close fight, and just a mixture of a bunch of things. I mean, Loma's had over 400 amateur fights and gone through surgery, only to come back for this fight at 35. So maybe Haney's got the upper hand here, and he needs to take advantage of that. As Eddie said, with his momentum and size at that weight, on top of his performance, he's got everything he needs to mark his victory. At the same time, he's not underestimating the former champion either. It's going to be a tough fight because he's expecting a much better Loma on May 20th. And there's one more person who would agree with him, Shakur Stevenson. He claims that Loma's too old to put out a great fight, which is going to give Haney the upper hand. Not to mention, in his fight against Ortiz, Shakur claims that he looked more like a 126-pound fighter rather than a 135-pound fighter. As for Haney, he's got it all together, and even though he doesn't have the same level of experience, Shakur only sees him as the one true winner in Las Vegas as he defends his title against the former undisputed champion. That said, while Hearn and Stevenson are pretty confident about his predictions, others might not feel the same. For starters, Teofimo Lopez stepped in to talk about his experience. Now, after grabbing a win back in 2020, he went on to lose to George Kambosos in 2021, who also lost back-to-back twice to Haney in Australia, making the American the undisputed champion at 135 pounds. Having said that, he's one of the very few fighters who knows what it takes to find a way to defeat someone like Vasiliy. And right before his own upcoming fight with Josh Taylor coming up in June, he came forward with his prediction: nobody beats Lomachenko. Nobody. And you gotta take his word for it because this man's been in the ring with him. So when he says Loma is smart and has a bunch of different tactics up his sleeve that you didn't even know were possible, you gotta believe him. And frankly, a lot of people, including Lopez, feel that Haney's not ready for that kind of challenge. It's only a matter of time before we see who manages to take the victory on May 20th. If anything, this fight is going to have a career-changing end for the two fighters. So, from Teofimo Lopez and Eddie Hearn making shocking predictions about the upcoming fight, to the American putting his status as undisputed lightweight world champion on the line, this is why Devin Haney vowed to dismantle Vasiliy Lomachenko once and for all for that pound-for-pound supremacy.